Shigaraki just destroyed All for One. We receive a comic-esque cover page with Gentle Criminal and La Brava looking fancy as they dash forward, tea included. This chapter is titled Hopes, and begins with a flashback to not so long ago involving Lady Nagant. Apparently, around the time Kurogiri was brought back with Spinner's help, Nagant was in Central Hospital, already planning to get into the fight. Outside the hospital, people were rushing to bring the injured from the Heteromorphs fight inside to care for them, regardless of which side they were on. We move on to a doctor who looks vaguely like Super Mario, shouting that Nagant shouldn't be out of bed because of the extent of her injuries. But she tells him to shut up as she continues to drag herself forward in the hallway. This panel of Nagant is reminiscent of when Sir Night-Eye was trying to stop All Might from continuing hero work after his battle with All for One. She demands to know where the enemy is so she can be of use in the fight. But the doctor won't tell her because she's still a prisoner. So in a shaky, weak voice from her damage, Nagant says, "Izuku Midoriya is relying on me." And this is followed by a flashback to when Deku had asked for her to fight along with him, having seen the good still in her. She repeats the same request again, this time covered in sweat from the pain of moving her body forward, her face covered in the same lines that came from the explosion. When it seems like she can't convince the doctor, Rocklock steps forward and offers to take responsibility for her and whatever actions she takes. Even then, the doctor is still hesitant to accept, but it seems more likely due to her condition. Ignoring the doctor, Rocklock hands over all the information Nagant needs, including updates on the battle, the location where the enemies are, and more. Looking worse for wear, Rocklock points out that they are at a critical moment and are relying heavily on Deku right now. And because he's their main hope currently, if she can do anything to support Deku, then he's willing to let her go. As we return to the place where we stopped last time, we see that the shot Lady Nagant used to cut off Shigaraki's hand also caused her massive damage. Since her body isn't fully healed from the implosion in the past, it likely wasn't able to withstand the use of her quirk yet. Blood splatters all over her body, seeping from her bandages everywhere. Knowing her body well, she knows that she can only use one more shot before she likely falls apart completely or passes out from her injuries. But she knows one shot is still a lot, if she can make it count. And because Deku was able to get her out of the darkness that was drowning her, she can start to see hope again, a light, and she can't give up yet. It's not only thanks to Deku though. When she saw Hawks, her successor, she realized that even working as a spy and doing questionable work didn't mean you had to lose yourself completely and just give in to sadness. They reminded her of her youth, of seeing hope and a spark of light like a star in the night sky. And it reminded her of why she wanted to leave and keep moving forward. With blood now dripping down her face, truly showing what little strength she has left, she hopes her thoughts for a brighter future can reach Izuku Midoriya. And we see that a glint, a sparkle, is back in her eyes. Lady Nagant lets her final shot go, and it comes shortly after the first one, ripping through Shigaraki's other hand this time. As he lets out a roar, knowing by name who could be capable of such precision, both hands are now lost. Deku kneels nearby, still catching his breath from gear shift, but he clearly can feel what this means for her. He begins to grip the ground below him with a renewed focus on his goal. At the same time, All for One inside of Shigaraki rages as he says, "You useless piece of trash. Do you still think you're the face of justice as you kill your comrades and beat the wounded?" But it's clear that All for One is falling apart and trying to save face by putting others down. Tomura makes it abundantly clear that he's no longer going to let himself be controlled, especially when he starts to laugh and make fun of All for One as a so-called master of manipulation. To further prove his stance, his fingers start to overwhelm All for One and push out of his potato-headed face, forcing him to stop speaking. It's a pretty direct way of Shigaraki saying that All for One needs to shut up. Shigaraki acknowledges All for One's plans and knows about the grand scheme he had in mind for revenge against All Might. But when his plan progressed further to include taking over Shigaraki's body, not as a successor, but as a replacement, he also ended up absorbing all of Shigaraki's deep-reaching hatred for the world and humanity. Sure, All for One's goal may have been to become the Demon King through stealing One for All, but he didn't take into account how much willpower Shigaraki had as well. Physically, they did merge together. Shigaraki also admits that he became a part of All for One successfully, but that doesn't mean that it was complete. In fact, Shigaraki hated the whole situation so much that he created a failsafe for himself through his loathing by hiding his origin, aka Tomura, inside the depths of his heart. And it's clear from the imagery that Tomura's soul was well concealed, deep inside the layers of hands and overlapping bodies and minds. Tomura's had his own goals since the beginning, and he wasn't just going to let them go because his sensei believed his own objectives were better. And with that, we see how Shigaraki's own origin starts to slowly move and regain control, taking his time as it let All For One believe he was still in charge. From the looks of it, the quirks that were stolen seemed to help in a way, as Star and Stripe had them still rebelling against their combined body. Dragging himself out, inch by inch, crawling through arms and darkness, Shigaraki says, "This is the path I took." But All For One isn't going to give up a perfect body that he molded specifically for himself that easily. He shouts for Kurogiri to be of assistance by helping get this body to his other one through warping. Kurogiri is there and he listens, but that does not mean he agrees with the command. Still not back to his full Nomu self, Kurogiri can only follow simple directives. And the one that matters, that was given to him long ago, is protect Shigaraki at all costs. Kind of ironic that All For One was likely the one to give him that order to begin with. At the same time, Kurogiri stutters out half words like, friend, shit, which could be his attempt at saying friendship or friend Shigaraki. Either way, All For One has no control over him. If we're being even more optimistic, could we say that it's part of Shirakumo still trying to break through? But the fact that we see a flash of Spinner, who awoke Kurogiri most recently, seems to point to him discussing Shigaraki instead. The rebellion doesn't end there though. Shigaraki begins to shout that he doesn't need one for all, and how he doesn't want to be controlled like this, every aspect of him, anymore. When he finally says, "I won't be your stinking pawn," he looks free at last. There's a wild look in his eyes, sure, but at least he's back to his crazy self and not a pawn under All For One's thumb. Interestingly, he compares himself to Lady Nagant and Gentle Criminal even, saying his heart is just like theirs, because it won't be corrupted. In this case, Shigaraki isn't saying he's going to become more heroic. He means that he won't forget where his dreams and goals came from, how he first started on his way of thinking. And for him, it wasn't about wanting to save people or a man from falling. It was his dysfunctional upbringing. We get an image of his literal broken home, cracked in half, as Shigaraki explains that everything that exists in this world is the cause of what he went through inside that place. Having accepted himself fully, Shigaraki joins with his younger self Tenko Shimura as he overwhelms the parts of All For One still struggling to hang on and remain in control. But instead of just hands coming through his mouth, now Shigaraki's entire body breaks through, making its way out at last. Looking more childlike than he has in the past, Shigaraki, now fully back to himself, announces his goal: to destroy everything that has to do with that house. As he says this, Deku rushes to grab him and bring him away from the people struggling in the floating Yue Island. Shigaraki and Deku stare in each other's faces, with Tomura telling him that his salvation can only come from achieving that wish. Nearby, Gentle is still holding up Yue, but he can't help but notice Deku taking off with Shigaraki, wondering what he's doing. Deku knows that Shigaraki is too much of a danger now that his quirks aren't being erased by Aizawa and Monoma, so he has to bring him elsewhere, away from everyone who could become collateral damage. Even Mirio can't help but worry about his junior at Yue, considering how dangerous the situation is. Amidst all this, there's someone off to the side holding a camera phone up and seemingly recording this whole debacle. But it's not clear who exactly this person is. Could it be another student from Yue? Or maybe someone who supports Deku like Kota? But judging by the size of the person, they have to at least be 18 or older. Looks like the final fight for the world may be streamed live for everyone on the planet to see. While bringing Shigaraki away, Deku admits that he won't let him destroy everything like he wants to. But at the same time, Deku knows young Tenko is still in there, crying and needing a hero who will actually help this time. As the side text says, the battle reaches a new stage. We get an awesome shot of Deku standing atop of rubble that used to be a coffee shop. On the other side, Shigaraki isn't too far away. His body folded sideways more like a demon than a person. His entire face is covered in darkness, with only his eyes shining through menacingly. Worst of all, even while Deku was bringing himself down to ground level, his hands were actually regenerating. So his decay quirk will be available to him again, adding one more layer of danger to this fight. From the looks of things, Deku's going to have to do his best to subdue Shigaraki, while also convincing him that the world isn't as terrible as he thinks it is. This isn't unlike what he did for Lady Nagant and Gentle. But will it work? Shigaraki, unlike All For One, doesn't actually care about stealing Deku's quirk, so this is bound to become a whole lot crazier. As always, I am Slice of Otaku. Thank you all so much for watching and have an awesome day. I love you.